Hello, I'm Simon. Welcome back to the workshop. Now this week I'm going to be making a carriage lock for my mini lathe. Let's get tinkering. Now the carriage on a lathe is the bit that moves the tool post towards the chuck or away from the chuck. Now normally you want this to be free so that you can perform that movement, but there are occasions where you want to be able to lock the carriage so that any flexibility between the carriage and the bed of the lathe is removed. Now my mini lathe does come with a carriage lock, but it's just a socket head hex cap screw, and you have to use an Allen key to tighten and loosen it. Now there isn't a lot of room in here to get the Allen key in to tighten it, so it's a bit of a faff. You end up having to move parts of the lathe which you may not want to move or you may not be able to move, and just to lock this, to turn it quarter of a turn, which is all it needs to lock it, can be really quite difficult. That's now locked and I can't move the carriage. So I want to make a lever here that I can use in place of this hex key so that I can literally just move that lever backwards and forward. Now in this position, with the cross slide all the way into the workpiece, further than you'd normally be able to go because normally the workpiece is in the way, then you can see that I can unlock and lock this okay. But I have some constraints if I want to make this a lever. One is I don't want to get in the way of these gib adjusting screws, so I just need to be careful that I don't get in the way of those. I've also got a little oiling point here that I need to make sure that I don't obscure either. It also needs to be low enough to not get in the way of the compound slide, and it also needs to be low enough to not get in the way of the wheel on the compound slide, so it has to be quite low. So you can see with this one it's too high, I can't actually move it past there because this is in the way. So that's just something else that needs to be considered. So I need to sort of make my lever about this sort of high, so in the locked position or in the unlocked position it's there, and then in the locked position it's over here. Now my original plan was to use a 6mm hex bit in here like this, along with a little mini ratchet, and this does work. Let's just pop that in there, and I can unlock and move that and relock, unlock, relock. Now this would have been a great solution had this hex bolt needed to move more than a quarter of a turn, because the ratchet would then have been a very useful feature. But because it doesn't need to move more than a quarter of a turn, the ratchet feature actually becomes a bit of a pain, because I have to reach in here and slide this little thing across in order to change direction, and you can imagine that there are times when this is very, very difficult because of the position of it. It tends to be really hard when the cross slide is about here and you're sort of trying to reach in here, especially if you've got the tailstock over here like this. It becomes a right pain. You know, I can feel the slide, but I can't actually, there we go, I've moved it. So it just becomes quite difficult. So I don't think this is the right answer. So I thought that perhaps a better answer might be to use the same hex bit but with a little 1/4 inch spanner, and in a lot of ways this is better. That's locked, that's unlocked, locked and unlocked, but the spanner won't stay there, so I need to think about what I'm going to do with that. But I'm thinking I can convert this cheap 1/4 inch spanner into a lever. Now this 6mm bit is a little bit wobbly in here, It probably needs to be like 6.1mm. I'd like it to be a friction fit if I can, so that I can push it in there and it then doesn't wobble around. So I'm going to modify this little screwdriver bit. That'll make it shorter by cutting this off, and then I'll file this down until it's just over 6mm at one end to make that friction fit that I'm looking for. If we look at this, we can see that the difference between the 1/4 inch hex and the 6mm hex is tiny. It's only 0.35 of a millimetre. Now I want to create one that's slightly larger than 6 so that it'd be a friction fit inside the 6mm captive cap head hex bolt. So I don't have much to actually file off. So this is working, but it's going very slowly. I've measured the original hex and it's about 6.37, which is 1/4 of an inch. It's now down to 6.3, so I've taken off 0.07 of a millimetre. I need to take off another 0.15 of a millimetre, so I'm about a third of the way there from where I need to be, I think. Well, I'm a bit embarrassed by my soldering skills, but I've now tidied it up and it looks okay, I guess. I don't know how long it'll last, but I've got some solder on there. I don't have a welder and I don't know how to braze, so I've used plumber's solder. I guess silver solder might have been better, but I didn't have any. I only had plumber's solder, and that's what I've used. Let's see if it now works. So I'm now going to tap this in place. It's probably not the best place to actually do this. I think having the cross side back would be better, but this is easier for you to see. And I'm only going to tap it with a bit of dowel. I'm just lightly tapping it in there. So now, with the carriage locked, this doesn't move. This locks the whole carriage for those operations where you want the carriage to be solid, and for the occasions when you need it to be loose, you just move that. Now the carriage moves freely. Now I could have disguised that this was a spanner by cutting this end off, but I quite like that it looks a bit like a spanner. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. It was really just a simple, practical, and perhaps a bit Heath Robinson way of creating a handle for the carriage lock on my vise. Now, I'm sure there are much better, more elegant solutions than the one that I've chosen. I'm not trying to suggest that this is the best way of doing it, but when you have limited skills, and I haven't had the lathe long, so I haven't really had a chance to learn the engineering skills needed to be able to do something more elaborate. For now, I'm happy that it works. It's significantly better than using the Allen key, which didn't really fit. So I'm happy with what I've achieved. If you've enjoyed this video, then please leave a thumbs up, it really helps. If you've got any questions or comments or ideas on how you would have approached this project with the level of skills that I have, then let me know in the comments. And if you haven't already, then please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.